grander earth has quaked before, moved by the sound of its voice. Seas that are shaken and stirred can be calmed and broken from my regard. And through it all, my eyes are on you. And through it all, it is well. Through it all, my eyes are on you, and it is well with me. And far be it from me to not believe, even when my eyes can't see. And this mountain that's in front of me will be blown into the mist of the sea. And through it all, my eyes are on you. And through it all, it is well. Through it all, my eyes are on you, and it is well. It is well.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Arcade United Church of Christ, where we are built upon the foundational work of the man that we are here to honor today. Much of what we do here at this church was inspired by or started by a group of people, including Harvey, who are so foundational to everything we do at this church to this day. So I want to welcome all of Harvey's family and friends to our service today as we gather to remember Harvey Lawrence Roll and take important and intentional time to remember what he meant to each of us. We're gathered to worship, to proclaim Christ crucified and risen, and to give thanks for his life, to commend him to our merciful Redeemer, and to comfort one another in grief. We gather to laugh, to reminisce, to share, to cry, to whistle, and to celebrate new and eternal life. Friends, as we begin this service this morning, I would invite all of you to take a moment to bring to mind your most cherished memories of Harvey, and let those memories wash over you in this space. These memories may bring up different emotions for all of you, but I want you to know that this is a safe place here. It is a place of shelter and a place of healing, so any feeling you have is holy and sacred. If there are regrets, address them now and then let them go. If there are things to be said, say them silently now and then let them go. If there's an empty place in your heart, fill it with memories of happiness shared and love shown, because time can never alter memories or love. If you have tears to shed, let them flow. They are expressions of your pain and signs of your care. All of your feelings are valid and sacred. So now we'll take a moment to bring to mind those memories of Harv as we begin our service. We'll open this morning with a hymn of comfort, which is Amazing Grace. And for anyone that would prefer to whistle along with any of the songs or hymns this morning, you are invited to do that. You can sing, you can whistle, you can do whatever you would like. So we'll open this morning with Amazing Grace.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I am found. I was blind, but now I can see.
Good morning. Will you please stand in body or in spirit and join me with our responsive call to worship, inspired by Psalm 23. God is our shelter, protection, and guide. God invites us to places of peace and beauty where wildflowers bloom and mountain streams flow. Even when anxiety and fear threaten to overwhelm us, and it seems like death would be easier than life. Even then, we need not fear. We will trust in God and For you, O God, nourish us even when trouble and enemies are all around. God's compassion and grace are with us every day. You may be seated. Our first reading today comes from the book of Philippians, chapter 2, verses 14 through 15. Do everything without grumbling or arguing, so that you may be blameless and pure, children of God without fault in a warped and crooked generation. Then you will shine among them like stars in the sky.
The Songs of Ascent, Psalms 121 and 122, adapted. I lift up my eyes to the hill, from where will my help come? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. He will not let your foot be moved. He who keeps you will not slumber. He who keeps Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. I was glad when they said to me, let us go to the house of the Lord. Our feet are standing within your gates, O Jerusalem. Jerusalem, built as a city that is bound firmly together. To it the tribes go up, the tribes of the Lord, as was decreed for Israel to give thanks to the name of the Lord. For there the thrones for judgment were set up, the thrones of the house of David. The Lord is your keeper. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun shall not strike you by day nor by night. The Lord will keep you from all evil. He will keep your life. The Lord will keep your going out and your coming in from this time on and forevermore. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they prosper who love you. Peace be within your walls and security within your towers. For the sake of my relatives and friends, I will say, peace be with you. For the sake of the house of the Lord of our God, I will seek your good.
almost missed my cue. An Old Testament reading, Ecclesiastes 3, 1 through 13. There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to uproot. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to tear down, and a time to build. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones, and a time to gather them. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to search, and a time to give up. A time to keep, and a time to throw away. A time to tear, and a time to mend. A time to be silent, and a time to speak. A time to love, and a time to hate. A time for war, and a time for peace. What do workers gain from their toil? I have seen the burden God has laid on the human race. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart. Yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. I know there's nothing better for people than to be happy and to do good while they live, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in their toil. This is the gift of God.
Please rise as you are able in body and spirit, and join with me in the responsive blessing from Matthew chapter 5. Now, when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you and persecute you and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you."
We've come to the point in our service where a select group of folks are going to come up and share memories about Harvey. So first, I would like to introduce Harv's niece, Karen Mensing.
This is something I had written in their card when Uncle Harv passed away, so it's for the siblings mostly, and now for everybody. Dear loved ones, there are so many things I could say about how wonderful I felt Uncle Harv was, but you already know that. The summer of 1950, at 9 years old, was the very first time I met Uncle Harv. At that time, I didn't know that Dad and Mom, that's Uncle Mo and Auntie Lane for you guys, were thinking about adopting me from the orphanage. They seemed so proud that they were going to be parents, so off we went for me to meet Uncle Harv and Aunt Joe. I was introduced to Uncle Harv, who was in the barn doing whatever a barn person does, since I had no idea at the time what a farm was. A short time later, we went into the house to meet Aunt Joe, who was in bed with Cousin Larry. Larry was about 5 days old, and of course, he was now the first cousin that I would have of many. In my personal life, Unc, and I always called him Unc, always made me feel like I was part of your family. I love the way I am considered a sibling rather than a cousin, and you all continue to treat me as one of you. I definitely had the disadvantage of being the oldest cousin and missed out of a lot of fun and craziness growing up together. 1 year after a long time between visits to him and Aunt Joe, Uncle Harv made a comment about how wonderful it was to be able to be together as adults. That made me feel so proud, and again, how close I felt to him and your family. One thing I will always remember was a congratulation card after our daughter Loralee was born. We already had Nathan. His added comment was, now I could stop having kids because I had one of each, and the rest would be repeats. That's when I found out Aunt Joe was pregnant with Vanessa. I could go on and on about the love I have felt from your dad. It is the same love he showed to me that he showed to Aunt Joe, all of you, and all of our families. So many memories and so much love. Now I would like to introduce my crazy cousin, Donna, whom I love with all my heart because we are really two of a kind and should have been real sisters together, but it would have messed up Uncle Harv's 1/2 dozen roles.
Thank you so much. Good job. You can clap or whistle, yes. Thanks, Karen, I guess. And thank you. Thank you for coming today. Thanks for sharing in this celebration with us. I know how difficult it can be to give up one of the few precious Saturdays of summer. I'm Donna, the third born of Harvey's 1/2 dozen roles. Dad instilled in me a love of words and a love of numbers. I'll give you a word that describes him to me. Insouciant. In the very best sense of the word, insouciant. Feel free to look it up. That's what he would have told me to do if he had used a word I didn't know. And I don't care if you bring out your phone right now, but only read the good. Okay. And the number? Well, let's start with 95 years and 347 days. You might have known I'd go here. Times 365 days in a year is 35,022 days on the planet. Times 24 hours in each of those days is 840,528 hours on Earth. Times 60 minutes in each hour, which is 50,431 minutes and 431 and 680 minutes, and he wasted precious few of them.
To the very end, when we wondered, as many folks do, why is he still here? What is his purpose? Even then, if we paid attention, there were lessons to be learned. The common courtesy of escorting us to the door of Jenny B when we were leaving, he was in his wheelchair. Now, you could consider it escorting or you can consider it just escaping, but we'll think of it as escorting us. And at lunch, if we were there at lunchtime or supper time, didn't matter what he had. If we showed up, he was no longer hungry. Here, you eat this. He would always share his food with us. Okay, I've given my fellow numbers people long enough to go to the next level. 50,431,680 minutes, 430,000, times 60 seconds in a minute, yes, I did go there. That's 3,025,900,800 seconds. 3 billion. Oh, 3 billion, wait a minute, wait. Technology, there it is. Oh, no, it says it can't be. Okay. I had my metronome, but it's not what. 3 billion of those. Okay, I had the deep and lasting privilege of caring for Dad with much help and support from my sisters and brothers as he made that 5-year transition through Alzheimer's and dementia. Okay, maybe it was really 10 years. From our intelligent, articulate, active, and all of those other adjectives that you're going to hear today, father, to our still intelligent in a very different way, nearly nonverbal, wheelchair-bound Dad. Through it all, he was loving, gracious, and funny. Jenny B. peeps who are out there or who are watching, you're the best. Thanks for adopting Dad into your family, caring for him as well as you could through COVID and beyond, and loving him and all of us for the final 156,124,800 seconds of his life, his precious life. So back to words now for just a short bit. Here's my first go at Dad's obituary. You may understand why my sibs lovingly but firmly put the proverbial kibosh on its publication. Harvey Lawrence Roll, known affectionately to his 6 children as the gap-toothed charmer, thank you, Larry, made his great transition from this mortal muck on Wednesday, May 1st, 2024, his grandson John's 37th birthday. Why did he do such a thing? Here's why. Most certainly, it was to let John know how very proud and honored he was that John and Alexis named their second-born son Harvey. Who names a little boy Harvey in 2024? Well, here's who. A grandson, one of 7, who loves his grandpa fiercely and deeply, as all 7 do. Josh, Jarrett, Aaron, Ryan, James, John, and Johnny have deep and abiding memories of time spent with Grandpa and Harv and Grandma Joe at the Henpeck Homestead, a haven of safety, love, and excellent food. How did these memories develop? Here's how. Every summer for years, James and John would spend several weeks there, and for years, Josh, Jared, and Aaron spent every weekend there. And Johnny was there frequently to visit and join in the fun. What fun at the homestead, you wonder? Oh, here's what. I'm almost done. Helping Grandpa in his annual impossible vegetable garden grown in soil so rocky that it was nicknamed Harvey's Rock Garden. Playing up in the woods or down at the creek until the streetlights came on, or until they heard Grandpa's whistle that could be heard for miles. Watching him go off to numerous meetings, and then in italics, it's next was to be a paragraph about his life, but you'll hear all of that stuff. And then I ran it past a couple of my siblings. Hard, fast, resounding, unequivocal, no. Somebody said it with me. No. So I stopped there. I'm closing my remarks with Dad's own words. I gave him this Father's Legacy book a bit ago. He got a few pages done. Worrying is not good for you. Changes can be exciting and hopeful in the world, in the nation, in your family, but they do make people nervous. Yet things are not always as they seem. In the dead of winter, think 4 seasons. It can be pretty difficult to imagine the richly colored beauty of flowers and foliage that are abundant in spring. It seems impossible that the earth can go from brown and barren to verdantly lush in 16, 12, 8, 4 weeks. But year after year, it does just that. So stop worrying so much. Don't be so nervous. You're welcome. Now I would like to introduce our first video. We have a couple videos from grandsons who couldn't be here. Ryan is, are you going to do this? Oh, I got it. Jim and Brenda's son, Ryan, Jackie's husband, Lily and Nora's daddy, has sent us a video.
Hi everybody, it's Ryan. This is my message for Grandpa Harv, but little story. The first time I met Grandpa Harv, I think I was probably 7 years old, and he was in his bed recovering from surgery in his whitey tighties and all his glory, and that was my first impression. I was like, Harvey just lets it all hang out, and he did, and he was very carefree in that sense, and that was one of one of my favorite things about him is he had a lightness about him and a carefreeness about him that was admirable. Just the way he conducted himself in the world and the way he had a gentle temperament and just the way he whistled around life, and it was an admirable way to be, and I still think of that oftentimes when I'm running around and I'm strung out and stressed out. I just think, Harvey would be whistling right now, and so it's nice to think of that. But Grandpa Harv and Grandma Jo were immensely sweet to me when I met them, and bringing me on as one of their own from the start. I was always tremendously comfortable in their presence, and they made me feel at home always, and I'll always have high regard for the two of them, and I keep their memory close, and I remember going up in the summers to stay with them for a week at a time. In the summers when I was little, just by myself, no Josh, Jared, or Aaron. I was welcome in their house like that, and it was wonderful. And they just treated me like their own. I'd go around with Grandpa, and we'd do the rounds. He's a social butterfly, having donuts with him. We'd just stop around town delivering Meals on Wheels, and just being with him was just good company. And I'll miss his company, and I'll think of him often. And I'm thinking of you. You're all in my hearts. I hope you're all well. I wish I could be there. Love for me and my family, and I hope to see you all soon. Bye.
Insouciant. Adjective from French origin, free from concern, worry, or anxiety, carefree or nonchalant. Synonyms: lighthearted, and debonair. And Harvey Roll, yes. Yeah. All right, I have the privilege of introducing Vanessa Adams, who will speak next.
Thank you. Thanks, Josh. Good afternoon, or hopefully it's still morning. I am, as Josh said, Vanessa Adams. I am Harvey's 6th born, and I'm going to do my best to read through this. I would say good morning in Harvey fashion and say, okay, it's a little dreary outside, but send her down, JC. I want to thank you all for being here to celebrate the life of Harvey, my poppy. A devoted husband, father, grandfather, great-grandfather, brother, uncle, cousin, and friend. I knew that I wanted to share something about Poppy, but when I sat down to start writing, I realized that it was going to be a little bit more difficult than I thought. and even more difficult to read. There's so much that I could say. So let me just share a little bit about my relationship with my dad. As a teenager, and some of you know this, it was tough. It was difficult. I was tough. I was difficult. Or some might say a brat. There was nothing Harvey could say or do that I would respond positively to. And I certainly would not admit that he was right about anything. So Harveyism number one. And this is a long-standing joke in our family that if he said anything and we argued with him or we said he was wrong, he says, I have blue eyes. I'm always right. Because he was the only one in the family that had blue eyes. So we must all be wrong. Or, ask me, I'm bound to know. It was a very push-pull dynamic for most of my teenage years, mainly because I'm a lot like Poppy, but something I would never admit as a teenager. I knew that I had special parents, and as I matured, I softened towards Dad. Were they perfect? Of course not, but none of us are. They did the best they could, and the foundation that they built taught me how to stand on my own. Sometimes I would fall, but he was always there to pick me up. Mistakes were okay as long as you learn from them. Harveyism number 3, and please, I beg for forgiveness. Shit hits fan and gets all over. So, you got to clean yourself off, hold your head high, and keep going. And I was fortunate, I always knew that he was proud of me and that he loved me. After all, I was his baby. Another Harveyism. Let me introduce you to my baby. And don't forget it. Oh, maybe that was my little ism. So there's a few more Harveyisms that I'll share, and many of you know them. I'm going to say other words. I won't swear through every single one of them because many of them do have them. Your arse is mossy. When he didn't believe what you said. When you asked how you are, you'll have to try me. I lie so. Pretty much meant he wanted a kiss, whether you wanted to give him one or not. I was just watching The Tragic before we knew things were changing with him, but he would sit on Church Street or Main Street and just watching the traffic go by, sometimes counting cars. Or, no thanks, I just had a bar of soap, when you asked him if he wanted something to eat and he wasn't hungry. As he started to forget in these past 5 years, I would pray that when I said, I love you, Poppy, he in turn would say, you damn well better, or I'll kick your ass. That was a good day. So before I go on, I do just want to say thank you, as Donna did, to the people of Jenny B. Richmond. You took such good care of our Poppy and all of us. He would often say, this is a good place to be. They treat me well, while he's trying to escape out the door. Harvey was a very different man than we knew these last 5 years, and I think that we have all been mourning him a little bit each time we saw him. At least I was. However, I learned to love and embrace the Harvey that he became. He was still charming, gentle, loving, and yes, devoted. He never stopped loving us or his beloved Joanne. When he was awake, he would light up when we came to visit. He loved looking at pictures of the family and watching videos of his grandchildren, great-grandchildren. He may not recognize them, but he knew they were his. You could see the love in his eye. He would sometimes touch the phone like he was trying to touch them. Devoted is my word for today. He was devoted to family, to friends, to his church, to this community. And whenever he would write me a letter, and I think probably everybody, he would sign it, devotedly, Dad. And he was loving and loyal to the end. Lastly, I just want to talk a minute about his devotion to his grandchildren. He was so immensely proud to be a grandfather and very proud of his grandchildren. That included his great-grandchildren as well. In the book of Proverbs, chapter 17, verse 6, it says this, grandchildren are the crown of the aged and the glory of children in their parents. is their parents. I know that Harvey felt that way about all of his grandkids: Wendy, Josh, Jarrett, Ryan, Aaron, James, John, Johnny, and all the special women you have chosen to go through this life with: Jackie, Danielle, Jennifer, Alexis, Elisa, and great grandkids: Evie, Alex, Jocelyn, Max, Ariana, Lily, Nora, Rylan, Jaden, Wyatt, Harvey, Finn, and Fisher. All of you are his crown. You are part of his legacy of love. You are what he meant when he said, "I'm blessed." When we started planning this service, Donna and I reached out to each of the grandkids to see if they wanted to share something today, and they responded. I'm going to speak for my son, Johnny Adams. Johnny's technically my stepson, however, he will always be my son, and my papi will always be his grandpa, Harv, and Johnny was always their grandson. Johnny shared a couple of stories with me that he wanted me to share, and one was one of the first times we came to visit. Grandpa asked him if he wanted to go to the grocery store with him. Sure, because he thought he was going to get something. He came back and said, "I can't ever do that again." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Have you ever gone to the store with Grandpa Harv?" I said, "Well, yeah." He says, "He knows everybody. Is he a celebrity?" He said, "We couldn't get 3 things and get back home." I think he was 8 at the time. Another time, he'll also never forget, and I think the others can attest to this too, forget Grandpa telling him to pee behind the shed. There's no reason to go inside and waste water. Safe to say, he continued to do that even when not at Grandpa's. And the last story is a family favorite of ours. It's funny now. It was not very funny for me and John at the time. Another Harveyism was him calling people a dizzy broad when he thought you said something dumb or silly. Well, Johnny thought this was hysterical. However, when he went home to Florida at the end of the summer, can you guess what he called his mom? A dizzy broad. That did not bode well for us for a while. Thank you for being here. We are blessed. Oh, next. It's my privilege to introduce my brother James Roll, Harvey's 4th born.
Hey, we like to talk. I'm going to try to keep this brief. Harvey Harv, Uncle Harv, Grandpa Harv, friend, dad. He's my dad. I'm James Harvey Roll, 4th of the half dozen Rolls. And I'd like to take a few minutes and talk and tell about his earlier years of this whistling old bag of smiles that we all loved. Harvey's dad died when he was very young, before he was 10 years old. He was an energetic boy, involved in church, had a paper route, loved baseball, typical young lad growing up in the city. Harvey was 3rd of 4 boys, and his mom became a tough, disciplined, no-nonsense single mom and was fairly adept at keeping the boys in line. But Harvey quickly grew disillusioned with city life, and he drifted toward a rough crowd and knew that at a very young age, he was headed in the wrong direction and something needed to change. His Grandpa George and Uncle Wally had a farm up on Route 39 on the top of Arcade Hill, and his dad, before he died, would take Harvey and his brothers out to the farm, and often as a boy, and Dad loved it up there. With his dad gone at 13 or 14 years old, Harvey longed for the fresh air, the hard, honest work, and the peacefulness of country life. So he approached Uncle Wally with the idea of moving out to live with him and work on the farm. Uncle Wally saw promise because Harvey had already begun to prove himself as an energetic, capable hand, doing chores, helping with haying, and anything that would strengthen his case. Uncle Wally said, "If it's okay with your mother, it's okay with me." Then the hard part ensued, convincing Beulah. She, as you can imagine, shot the whole cockamamie notion down cold. And Uncle Wally and Anna, she said, Uncle Wally and Anna don't need another mouth to feed. They don't need the responsibility of an adolescent boy. But Dad knew what he wanted. He patiently persisted and made his case. She finally relented and agreed to talk with Uncle Wally. And Wally simply said, we could use him. With that, Dad moved to Arcade for good. He spent the rest of his life in this community with the people he loved. A few years later, he was riding down Main Street, right out here, in a car with a friend, and a beautiful young girl was standing on a corner. It was either Park Street or Church Street or Prospect Street. I don't remember which. And he would never forget that moment. Not long after, he was on his way to basketball practice at the high school over here, and there's a curved hallway behind the auditorium, and he was walking down toward the gymnasium, and he heard this beautiful song, this beautiful female voice coming from the aud. And he went in, and it was the girl he had seen on the corner. And he found out her name, Joanne Fuchs. And somehow, this is the mystery. He got her to agree to go to the annual Christmas ball with him. Then, the boy that she really had designs on and interest in asked her, and she went to her mother and wanted to dump Harvey, and her mother said, no, you already agreed to go to Harvey. You got to hold up your end of the bargain. And as it's often said, the rest is history. Harvey and Joanne married, had 6, some would say flawed and damaged, I would say magnificent children, to whom they dedicated their lives. Now, men are not born great fathers. Harvey was no exception. The experimental laboratory of parenthood are the firstborn children. Sorry, Larenbeck. Luck of the draw. But I want you to know that the pain is real, and I acknowledge that. But thank you. Thank you for blazing the trail, dude. And by extension, training him. And to Dad's credit, he listened to and learned from his kids. He softened his stance on some things. He changed course in many meaningful ways. And he became a really fine father. Now, after a life of living with, learning from, and about, loving him and being loved by him, it's abundantly clear Harvey was one hell of a guy. And Tim wanted us to remember this about him. Whenever Dad blessed a meal or said grace or anything, he always finished it with, and I'll end here, Father, help us to remember the needs of others, especially the need for each other. Thank you for coming. Y'all can hear me, Kate? No. Flawed and damaged. So I am going to introduce a video of my son Aaron Larson Roll, and he's going to share some thoughts about his grandpa, and he's living right now in Naples, Italy, so he couldn't be here.
To my loving family, today is a day of mourning, but it should be filled with love and joy of the memory of Harvey Roll, my grandpa, who was a man who lived life to its fullest in every sense. Grandpa's devotion and love to his family and faith is alive and well in this beautiful family he created. He taught us the meaning of what a man is, of what a family is, and should be. Grandpa, I cannot express in words what it meant to have you in my life. I aspire to be a fraction of the honorable, loving man that you were. Well, I wish I was there. I feel you here with me now, half a world away. I find solace in knowing that you left us in peace to reunite with my grandma and my brother, who love you so much. I know that you'll be looking over us as a guiding light. I'll always remember you with immense honor and love. Rest in peace, Grandpa, and know that your love lives on through generations of our family. I love you.
Well, you've heard from many of Harv's family as they've had a chance to share today, and now I'd like to invite Rich Vogt to come forward to share, who will offer a perspective from our church family here at Arcade UCC.
Well, it certainly isn't easy being the last one to remember following that group. Karen, if we would have been siblings, we would have been a bag of donuts, not a half a dozen rolls. All right, I'll get back in the mic here. What an honor and privilege it is to be here today to remember Harv. My name is Rich Vogt, and my bride Helena and I have been family members of the Rolls for a very long time. As I try to share some of the very best of Harv, I will try to use words that he himself shared with me. And it's hard to be the last one because you hear all the things that you already have on your paper because they meant so much to us. So if you hear some repeated words, it's because I had to go last. As the great Yogi Berra said, I just want to thank everyone who made this day necessary. Yep, just like Yogi, Harv had many of his own isms. Thank you, Vanessa, for using that word. Sometimes just 2 or 3 words, such as, I am blessed, or see you in church, or, and this was one of mine that he always would do to me. Right before the anthem, he'd be thumbing through, and then he'd look over right at me and say, what are you going to sing today? Okay, Harv. If something was good, it was damn good. And one of my favorites, Vanessa, I know you loved it too. If he was even a little disgruntled with you, you might get, your ass is mossy. Now, whatever words came out, they were always from the heart. That was Harv. I even have one of my own isms for him. I put 5 words into just one. Now, he was, if you paid attention, he was always writing or doodling something down so that he had it on paper to share with you at a later date. And he said something I would have to I'm sorry, let me get this right, because it's my word. When he would do something or say one of his isms, and I only shared this with Helena, maybe Vanessa and Donna. I'd look over at Helena and I go, Harvey doodle all the day. That was Harv. Harv shared these words, now this is after. If you saw my notes, oh my God, I changed them so many times. One time, I remember one of our pastors was leaving us, and not only leaving us, but he was changing his occupation. Harvey gets up, and I will never forget this, and that's why I'm sharing these words. Harvey gets up and shares these words of wisdom with us, who was, when we lost a pastor, it was always heartbreaking for us. So here's what he says. He said, there are goodbyes, B-Y-E-S, and there are goodbyes, B-U-Y-S. And then he went on to tell us of all the good that this pastor had done for us, even though he was leaving us. Now here, I'm not here to say goodbye, B-Y-E, to my dear friend Harv. I'm here to tell you that Harv was a goodbye, B-U-Y. I always got the story that after he married Joanne, his mother-in-law, I'm pretty sure this is right, his mother-in-law told him that he was needed at the UCC. Is that the right person? The mother? Who was it? All right. But I think Harvey used to put the mother-in-law thing in there. So, he had to come here. And that's what I'm going to tell you about. Harv didn't just come here. He married this church, as he put it. He was a goodbye, B-U-Y. Harv was a deacon from 1959 to 67, again from 68 to 72, again from 76 to 78, and again from 81 to 84. He was a trustee from 1951 to 60, and a moderator from 69 to 70, and then again in 1981. Not to mention all the years he was on the church council after we went from deacons and trustees. Harv was a good bye. Harv was a Sunday school teacher back in the day, the sexton of the church for many years. He could fill the pulpit when needed, and he was a lifetime choir member. You get the idea. Harv really was a good bye. Some of my favorite memories of Harv, he was a He was a first responder when my son Tom passed. I remember cooking chowder through the night with him. He loved to stir the pot. Apple picking with him and Joanne and my family. Harv and I, we'd bust out our pocket knives. We'd eat more than we picked. How about those Limburger cheese parties? Always to include a beer or two. Choir practice on Wednesday, and then the VFW to follow. And of course, singing in the back row with him on Sunday mornings. Harv was the main reason I joined the choir. He always encouraged me to sing. He always had the right note. He was my music mentor. Just being in the choir got me 2 days a week of quality time with Harv. What a gift. The more we sang together, the more our two voices became one. I was truly blessed to be a part of that back row. And in closing, of all the things Harv and I shared together, this was my favorite. We both loved our brides very much, and we both knew how lucky we were to have them. We shared that regularly with each other, along with great stories from the past with our babes. To know that he is back with Joanne brings great joy to my heart. One thing I have learned over the years, the more you love someone that has gone before you, the easier it is to remember them all the days of your life. They will always be with you. Harv was a goodbye. It is not goodbye, BYE, for me. It is until we meet again, my friend. I love you, Harv. And he said, you better.
Our next song is the Lord's Prayer, and I would invite all who are able to stand either in body or in spirit. Well, you've heard these words a lot already this morning. I am blessed. These are the words that stuck out to me when I had the opportunity to meet with some of Harvey's family this week. It was a tagline that echoed through much of Harvey's life from the very beginning to the very end. I am blessed. And from the stories that we all heard this morning, the stories that I had the privilege of hearing over the last few weeks, all about Harvey, about his relationship with his caring and loving and supportive wife, Joanne, it's obvious to see why he always said that he was blessed. When you meet and talk with his 6 children, the prides and joys of his life, it is obvious to see why he always said, I am blessed. When you hear the words that have been shared by his grandchildren, it's obvious to see why he said, I am blessed. When you see the faces of his 13 great-grandchildren, it is obvious to see why he is blessed. Harvey Roll, in the many roles that he held in his life, son, husband, father, grandfather, great-grandfather, uncle, store owner, truck driver, school board member, farmer, gardener, through all the titles that he carried in his life, he was blessed. But friends, part of being blessed means that you have the responsibility to share that blessing with others. Recently, I had the privilege of looking at some files that Harvey wrote and collected during his time as a supply preacher in this area. In these files, he had a note, and I have it right here, and I get to read it to all of you. And this note is titled, In Teaching Your Children About God. And Harvey writes, there's a story about a man who once stood before God, his heart breaking from the pain and injustice in the world. Dear God, he cried, look at all of the suffering, all of the anguish, the distress in your world. Why don't you send help? And God responded, I did send help. I sent you. Each one of us was sent to help. It's not the task of an instant or a minute or a year, but it's the task of a lifetime. Friends, Harvey knew that there is a responsibility that comes with being blessed, and that responsibility is to then in turn be a blessing to others. And he was a blessing to others when he sacrificed. A farmer at heart, he cherished Joanne more than life, and he gave up his dream of farming for her, becoming active in her church, keeping food on the table and a roof over her head by working at anything and everything necessary. He was a blessing when he guided 6 children through the trials and tribulations of growing up and through adulthood. He was a blessing when he shared fresh produce out of his garden. He was a blessing when he took up conversations and offered hope to the people that came into the stores that he owned. He was a blessing when people smiled as they heard his whistle and laughed after he heard and told a joke. Harvey and Joanne both understood how blessed they were and the responsibility of being a blessing for others as they opened their home to everyone, especially as we heard this morning, their extended family, and made them feel like a part of the crew. Harvey was a blessing when he prayed for people, when he preached in churches, when he shared his faith in Jesus through his words and through his actions. And speaking of words, I have some more words that Harvey saved. These words are from a sermon that he preached almost exactly 56 years ago. 2,000, we're doing numbers this morning, 2,920 Sundays ago on August 4th, 1968, note the date, what's tomorrow's date? August 4th, and it's a Sunday. Harvey preached this sermon about a little brass box, and these are some words that he shared. Only a few years ago, I heard a little story, which I will call the story of the bright brass box. It was the story of an itinerant preacher's family down in Texas. They had many children and very little money and moved around very often from place to place. The children always remembered there was a little shining brass box, not any bigger than a shoebox, and somehow they all came to feel that this box was very important, very precious. It was always locked, and they never saw inside of it. They used to wonder what was inside of it when they were all children. One of them suggested that maybe it was full of $100 bills. That was a wild guess because there were not many $100 bills in this family. Another thought maybe it was full of jewels. Well, there was not very much place for jewels in this family's life. Always when they moved, they made sure to be careful in moving that box. Whatever else was left or delayed, the box must go safely and carefully to its new place. They came to feel a kind of veneration, a kind of awe about that box. It was in one of these times of moving that one of the children asked his mother about the box. The mother hesitated, smiled, and then went to the cupboard, brought the box out, unlocked it, and dumped the contents onto the table. Well, so the story goes, the child was very disappointed. All of his life he had felt such awe and veneration for the box, and now that it was dumped out on the table, it was nothing but old papers. But his mother was gently handling those papers, and it seemed that she was talking to them rather than to him, talking to herself. This old wedding certificate, she said, why, it doesn't seem possible that was 30 years ago. And these little baptism certificates, one for each child, all clipped together with a little clip. And these school reports, not all of them with A's, plenty of them with F's, but the F's were more fun. And an old life insurance policy that they had let lapse, so it wasn't worth any money at all. And a certificate of scholarship award for one of the children. All of these things precious in the precious little box. And every one of them came by way of difficulty, came by way of hardship, came by way of some kind of achievement there in their family life. Friends, all of us are kingly souls who are in the direct line of God. These souls redeem the waste places and the clay grounds, the difficulties and the hardships of life, and they make the greatest contribution that anybody can ever make to any one of us. They show us that no matter what hardships or difficulties there may be, life can still be lived. Sometimes we wonder about that. Life can be lived and is worth living. The livability of life, I take it, is that about as deep as real a contribution as anybody can ever make to you and me. And you know, among the many figures of speech which are used to try to express the idea of God, God is called the great architect. Now, if God were only a God of beauty or only of ease and loveliness and smooth sailing, then he would not be a God fit for our world, and our world wouldn't need a God at all. But if God is the greatest architect, God works in the clay ground, and we must sometimes seem very clay ground to God. If God works in the clay ground, then there is hope for you and for me. There is hope for human history. Friends, that is my story. That is my bright brass. Well, my dear friends, Harvey was blessed. He was a blessing, and his blessed blessings live on through each person that he loved and cherished. His care, his devotion, his sacrifice, his memories all live on through each and every one of you. And we have the assurance that Harvey is now living into the greatest blessing ever offered. Eternal life with the love of his life, Joanne. Eternal life with friends and family that have gone before him. And eternal life with his redemptive God. So friends, in honor of Harvey and the life that he lived, fill your brass boxes. Fill them with the things that matter to you the most. Fill them with love, and fill them with family. Fill them with friends. Fill them with faith. Fill them with blessings. Cherish them wherever you go, and each time you look at them, may you remember to live your life as Harvey lived his, a blessed people who are blessing others. Amen. And now I would like to have Anita Paulman come up to introduce our next video.
At this time, it is my honor to introduce to you my son, James Daniel Schmanik.
Hi, everybody. You're all there today to celebrate one of the greatest men I know and have known, Harvey Roll. Although I couldn't be there today, I wanted to share with everyone a poem I found that in some way, shape, or form hopefully speaks to everyone there. I came across it just by happenstance and fell in love with it, and I hope that you too will enjoy it. The name of the poem is Epitaph by Merrill Malloy, and it reads, "When I die, give what's left of me away to children and old men that wait to die. And if you need to cry, cry for your brother, walking the streets beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known or loved. And if you cannot give me away, at least let me live on in your eyes and not your mind. You can love me most by letting hands touch hands, by letting bodies touch bodies, and by letting go of children that need to be free. Love does not die. People do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away." I love you all and hope you are having a grand celebration of life for my grandfather and one of my mentors, Harvey Roll. Love you.
I invite you to stand either in body or in spirit. We've come to the point in our service where we will release Harvey to God's eternal care, and we will pray together. So let us pray. Beloved one, with gratitude for all the gifts you bestowed in the world through Harvey Lawrence Roll, and the assurance that his presence among us continues through our lives and love, an acknowledgement that it always feels too soon to let go, in confession that we hold regrets and remorse, conflict untended, or words left unspoken, and in faith that love eternal welcomes Harvey with open arms. We entrust Harvey to your embrace, to the welcome of the earth, our beginning, our place of return, and to the rhythms of life that remain even through death. Receive Harvey into your care, and may peace be his final resting place. Our closing hymn today, our hymn of hope, is I'll Fly Away. And now may this blessed community and all who knew and loved Harv go with the peace that comes from gathering in love's presence. May the memories of Harv be your companion. May they bring laughter and joy when your heart is heavy. May they bring strength when the days are long. May they be a reminder of the gift of life so precious and short. On this day and all the days before us, may the sacred uphold you and encourage you in furthering the knowledge and presence of the love that sustains us through all things. Go with peace, beloveds, because love goes with you. Amen. Friends, a quick announcement before we close today. We will have the family in the first few rows leave first, and then everybody else is invited to leave after that. Our next stop is we are heading to the cemetery for a burial. Anybody that would like to come is invited to come. If not, you're invited to head down to the VFW and raise a glass in honor of Harvey. So that is our plan for after this. Also, I've had a request to pray over the food right now so that you can start eating right away. So we're going to do one more prayer and then we'll wrap up. So let's pray. Holy and gracious God, we thank you for this opportunity to come together today and share our memories of Harvey and all that he meant to each and every one of us here. God, we ask that you would bless the food that we will be eating and the hands that prepared it, that we would have the energy to go out and do the good works that you put in front of us to do each day. And Father, help me bless the needs of others, especially our need for each other. Amen.